Presidential hopeful Andrew Yang is touting a very impressive fundraising fourth quarter. According to the campaign, he brought in $16.5 million. That's more than Vice President Joe Biden raised in the third quarter.
Incredible. Meanwhile, Yang is also upping his ground game in the great state of South Carolina. Ahead of the new year, he held multiple events in the Palmetto state, where the RCP polling average currently has him at 2%. Here to discuss Yang's ground game there is his South Carolina campaign chair, Dr. Jermaine Johnson. Dr. Johnson, great to have you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for having me this morning.
Thanks for coming.
Of course. So first, let me get your reaction to this pretty impressive fundraising haul. $16.5 million, nothing to sneeze at. More, as Marshall said, than Vice President Biden was able to raise last quarter. What do you think that says about his campaign?
I pretty much screamed this morning when I saw that on Washington Post, because they keep me from knowing all those good tidbits as well, because I can use those as selling points. But when I saw that, it solidified everything that I've been talking about to supporters here in South Carolina, that really our only issue is name recognition. And once the name recognition grows, you see it correlates with the fundraising goals. So, the more people hear about Yang, the more people like him, the more money we bring in.
So what do they like about Yang, right? So he's running on the campaign about universal basic income. Is that specifically exciting for people in South Carolina?
Absolutely. The UBI, see, in South Carolina, a lot of people have heard of this corridor of shame. And down here in the corridor of shame, it's got record, poverty and unemployment and situations where, the UBI could really do some transformational change. So, when I go to little towns like Sellers, South Carolina, with Mayor Barbara Hopkins, and I say, hey, listen, let's talk about what this UBI could do for your community. The last census, they had 206 people. But, she's actually doing a census by herself. She's going door to door in her town. And they're going to actually have like 439 people, I believe. But we'll talk about what the UBI would do, for $1,000 for, each of those 400 people. So, it's bringing $400-something into their small community every month. And it would completely be, transformation for everything that's going on in this small town.
How did you learn about Andrew Yang, and what is it about his campaign that appealed to you in particular? I mean, you've seen your fair share of struggles in this life as well. What would $1,000 a month have meant to you in your toughest times?
So growing up, I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, and I was born in the '80s, and that's when the height of the crack epidemic, when it really hit home. And it didn't skip my family. My family, fell victim to the crack epidemic. It also, affected a lot of my, my friends, families, and people like that. One of my brothers was actually, a victim to gun violence because of the whole drug thing that was going on. So, that's the only memory I really have of my brother, is knowing that, he was killed by a guy who was his best friend, who he was selling drugs with. And growing up, I've been homeless. I've lived in a lot of different motels and hotels. I've slept on people's couches and things like that. So, going through all of that, I got I got a basketball scholarship to play at the College of Charleston down here in South Carolina. But I had to think about what that $1,000 a month would have done for my family growing up, instead of my parents or, family members going to jail or anything. They would have gone to a rehab center under Andrew Yang presidency. The $1,000 a month would have really, changed my life and kept me from being homeless and kept me from living, in people's couches and things like that. So it was a no-brainer for me to really support Andrew in his path to presidency.
So South Carolina is interesting. You have a really large minority population, but it's also a very conservative state too. So how is Yang's sort of crossover appeal or ability to sort of talk to conservative voters too, is that playing into what you're seeing on the ground?
Absolutely. Right now we have an open primary here in South Carolina. So, people here, they don't have to really pick sides right now. So it's like, hey, we like this guy, Andrew Yang, but down here in South Carolina, poverty doesn't just affect, African Americans. It affects the rural white folks as well. And because of that, you see people down like in Batesburg, Leesville, and out in Lexington and these different areas where, they're like, well, $1,000 a month could really change their life as well. So I break it down to different individuals, and, most American conservatives, liberals, they just want to have a good life. Most of them just want to say, you know what, my kids are getting the right education. I have a safe neighborhood. I'm able to put food on the table at night. That's partisan stuff. So, you know, when I just break it down like that, people are like, you know, I don't care, you know, what you have going on in terms of, you know, race or gender or whatever. All I want to do is be able to take care of my family.
Yeah. You know, if you ask Democratic primary voters consistently, they say healthcare is their number one issue, touches all communities as well. And early in the campaign, Andrew Yang had said he supports Medicare for all. He actually ran ads saying he supports Medicare for all. But when he came out with his own healthcare plan, it was much more limited than, you know, Sanders-style Medicare for all plan. Are you getting a lot of questions about that on the trail? Were you surprised personally that he came out with such a more sort of targeted, limited approach?
No, not at all. You know, I've been talking about his plans for, you know, for months now, and you know, we've seen backlash, but a lot of people they're just not really reading into the fine print and the things like that. So we just look at titles and we act like you know we act like Bernie Sanders owns the title Medicare for all. So I mean that's really caused some situations itself.
Well, what do you think
You know,
people are misunderstanding? Because Yang's plan doesn't call for expanding Medicare beyond where it is currently. So, you know, he says he still supports Medicare for all in spirit, but what do you think people are misunderstanding about what he's advocating here?
that his project is a work in progress. That you know, Yang is he's more open to hearing people and listening to constituents and listening to the American people than we have in, you know, other candidates. See, a lot of our candidates right now, they're stuck in just so they dig their heels in their ways and in their policies. And you know, Yang is more like, hey, listen, if you don't like this, let's talk about it. Let's change it. Let's deal with this. And, you know, and I really wanted to hear what the people have to say, because it's not about him or anybody else. It's really about the people, the American people. And he really feels strongly about that. So, you know, I can guarantee you, you know, that nothing's going to stick 100% like that. What it will do is it will be a work in progress in terms of, hey, all right, well, if this doesn't work for you, then let's figure out the best thing that works for you.
Well, Dr. Johnson, thanks for joining us.
Great to have you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up on Rising, turning from the executive branch to the legislative, the Hill's Jordan Carney is going to share which 10 senators could swing the balance of the impeachment trial.
And she tells us about the laundry list of bills awaiting Congress this new year when Rising continues.